And here's the story. The story is that climate models don't look complete unless you model for what clouds do, obviously, right? And clouds can have two different effects. They can make it warmer, or they can make it cooler, depending on a variety of other variables and timing and whatever. So it turns out to be enormously complex to add clouds to your climate models. Now, why would you bother doing it? Well, they've looked at, there have been over 100 climate models, and many of them have been back-tested, meaning they use the model and say, well, if this model had existed 100 years ago, would it have gotten everything right? And several of them do. So several of the models can accurately hindcast, as it's called, the past. So if they had existed, they would have predicted where we are now. So that means those are pretty good models, right? Because out of 100, there were several of them that hindcast well, right? That's pretty convincing. I mean, what are the odds? What are the odds? Well, you skeptics, I don't know what you're talking about. That's, the entire argument about climate change is based on the models, and several of the 100 or so models, several of them have proven that they can very closely reproduce the past right up to the present. So why doesn't that convince you? Why aren't you convinced that that's valid? Did I just mention that they're accurate? Several of them are very accurate. No, it's complete bullshit. Here's why. Give me 100 random models. So this is my own, I'm not saying the real models are random. I'm saying give me 100 random models. But before you give me 100 random models, I'm going to tell you what the good ones should show. Right? So I want you to give me 100 random models, but keep in mind that I'm going to throw them away unless they show that the temperature is increasing within this band. You're wasting your time if you create a model that shows anything else. So give me 100 models, all you guys, go off and make some models. But believe me, you're wasting your time unless it's in this narrow band. Right? Now, so 100 models get created. Of the 100, are you surprised that several out of 100 are very close to being accurate? No, because we know what the past looks like. So the past is already modeled. So when you tell people in the model, you say, make sure it fits the past. So all they did is give you what you asked for and what you expected and what everybody expected. So there's nothing scientific about this in the least. In fact, whatever is the opposite of science, alchemy, astrology, whatever is the opposite of science is what this is. Now that's the existing situation. Now it gets more absurd. Do you think that could get more absurd? Here we go. Now the scientists are saying that the old models were excellent, and although they're very, very excellent and they've hindcasted well, they don't work. Both things are true. Both things are completely true. And nobody's mentioning that there's any conflict between these two ideas. The ones we already have are excellent. Also, at the same time, everybody knows they're completely bullshit. All of our policies are built on the existing models, which we're desperately trying to improve by adding clouds, which might be the biggest variable. And here's the best part. They don't know how to add clouds. I mean, they're trying, and there are different models trying to do it, but the complexity exceeds our computing ability. And then you get wildly different answers. So, these are the things that this is the official consensus of climate science. I'm not going to add a skepticism here. nothing I say next is outside of the mainstream. I don't know if I get banned from social media for agreeing with the mainstream, but let's give it a run. The mainstream says the models are really, really good and they totally don't work and we don't know how to fix them. Fact check me. I'm saying this in public. It's a very simple statement that the consensus of science is both of these things. The current models are great. That's why we make policy based on them. And they're totally worthless, and we don't know how to fix them. Also true. What part of that did I get wrong? Now, if you tell me that you can, let's say, use science, use the output of science, without an understanding of cognitive dissonance, I don't think you can. None of this makes sense except in the context of a different science, science of psychology. The only way you can understand what's happening here, because keep in mind, this was in a major publication, and it never pointed out its own irony, or inconsistency, I guess. The article itself never pointed back to itself and said none of this makes sense. It never did that. It simply integrated it like it made sense. And of course it doesn't make sense. Now, some will say, and I think this is fair to say, that all of the models that anybody believes seem to show that the temperature is going up, and that there's no doubt that when the temperature goes up, that changes things enough that we have to worry about it. Some say it'll make things better, some say it'll make things worse. Some say it'll be a mix, some say some people are worse, some people are better. We don't know, and that's hard to model too. But just think of the enormous absurdity of this. And by the way, just for the record, I think the planet is warming. I think humans have something to do with it. Those things seem like the easiest things to know for sure. But the actual extent of the warming and how much to worry, that's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. Not that it necessarily changes what you would do. All right.